So, what if I told you that way back, more than 50 years ago, one of the top universities in the world basically predicted that our modern society is heading for a total collapse? Yeah, let's unpack that.
And look, this wasn't some wild guess from the fringes. This came from a huge landmark report from MIT called The Limits to Growth. And they didn't just wave their hands around, they put a date on it. They said a major societal decline would start kicking off right around the year 2040.
Okay, so right now you're probably thinking, come on, that was the 70s. A lot has changed, right? Surely we figured things out by now? Well, here's the kicker. A follow-up study, a recent one from 2021, didn't just confirm the original prediction. It suggested we might actually be ahead of schedule. So, that's the big question we're diving into. Was this whole thing just some wild, pessimistic guess from the dawn of the computer age, or was it a chillingly accurate glimpse into our future? A forecast of the exact challenges we're dealing with today.
All right, to really get to the bottom of this, we have to remember one thing. The idea of society collapsing, well, it's not exactly new. It's been happening for, ever.
I mean, history is just littered with the ruins of these once great empires. And the way they fell apart, it's all over the map. Sometimes it's instantaneous, boom, like Pompeii getting buried in ash. Sometimes it takes a few weeks, like the Aztec Empire. And sometimes it's this super slow, grinding decline that takes centuries, like what happened with Rome.
But here's the thing about our world today. It's just different. We've hit this incredible, unprecedented level of technology, and, everything's connected. But that complexity, the very thing that makes us so advanced, it might just be our biggest weakness.
I love this perspective because it's so true. It's so easy to forget that, an average person today has luxuries that the richest kings in history couldn't even dream of. We're talking climate control, modern medicine, talking to someone on the other side of the planet instantly, food that won't kill you. It's just an absolutely incredible time to be alive.
And this really gets to the heart of the paradox. Think of our modern society like a super high-tech jet engine. It's incredibly powerful, it's insanely fast, and it's super complex. Now compare that to past empires. They were more like a donkey. A lot slower, way simpler, but also a lot tougher, more robust. Our jet engine, on the other hand, is so interconnected that if just one tiny little part fails, the whole thing can fall out of the sky.
So, you gotta wonder, how in the world did MIT come up with this crazy prediction way back in the 70s? Well, it all boiled down to this absolutely revolutionary computer model they built to try and simulate, well, our future.
You have to remember, this was the era of computers that took up an entire room and had less power than your watch does today. And yet, this team at MIT built something called World 3. It was one of the first ever models that tried to simulate the entire global system, everything from population growth to running out of resources.
One of the key ideas they had to get right was something called a feedback loop. The analogy they use is perfect. Imagine holding a microphone up to a speaker. You get that little sound, it gets amplified, comes out the speaker, goes back in the mic, gets amplified again, and you get that awful screaming feedback that gets louder and louder. Well, the same kind of thing can happen in our global system, where one small change can just spiral and amplify itself into something massive.
The World 3 model was actually tracking hundreds of different things, but it really boiled its analysis down to the super complex relationship between 5 key areas: our population, our industrial output, how much food we're producing, the resources we have left, and of course, pollution.
So what they did was run this thing over and over again, tweaking all the different variables. And what they got was a bunch of different possible futures, which they basically grouped into 3 main scenarios for humanity.
Okay, so the first path was called comprehensive technology. This is basically the tech will save us dream, right? Then you had the stabilized world scenario. This is where we as a global society consciously decide to make big changes towards sustainability. And then there's the third one, business as usual too. And that's the one where we just keep doing what we're doing and don't really change anything major.
And here's what's so important about that. The most optimistic future, according to the original researchers back in '72, wasn't some magical tech breakthrough saving the day. Nope, it was us, intentionally changing course and deciding to scale things back to create a stable, sustainable world.
So, that was the choice laid out for us back then. Now, fast forward 50 years. Which path did we end up taking?
And again, this isn't just a guessing game. That 2021 study I mentioned, they took 50 years of actual real-world data, everything from population numbers to pollution levels, and they laid it right over the model's original predictions. They wanted to see which of those paths did our reality actually line up with. And the results were, well, pretty sobering. The analysis found that our real-world trajectory lines up almost perfectly with one scenario in particular, business as usual 2. Yeah, the one that ends in collapse.
So what does that look like? In the model, this is the path where things like industrial output and food production hit their absolute peak and then start to fall off a cliff, a really sharp, dramatic decline right around the year 2040. And population follows soon after. It's basically a cascade effect, a domino effect, where running out of stuff and too much pollution just triggers a total system breakdown.
Okay, but we have to talk about the main criticism of this whole thing, because it's a big one. For decades, skeptics have said the model's biggest flaw is that it seriously underestimates human ingenuity. You know the idea, when our backs are against the wall, we always innovate our way out of trouble. Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
And that's really where it leaves us. It's the ultimate question, isn't it? Was this whole MIT model just a brilliant but way too pessimistic warning? Or is its 50-year-old prophecy actually about to come true? And are we finally about to get serious about the idea that there are in fact limits to growth?